People who break their back and people who win the lottery are back to their baseline happiness 2 years later. Whether you're happy or unhappy at the end, it tends not to last. If you get that thing, then you get used to it, and then you get bored again, then a few months later you want something else. On the other hand, you're going to die, it all goes to zero, heat, death, the universe has no meaning, right? So what is philosophy? Everyone, you live long enough, you'll be a philosopher. Philosophy is just when you find the hidden generalizable truths. What is happiness? I think it's just basically being okay with where you are.
Not wanting
things to be different than the way they are. Not having the sense that anything is missing in this moment. I always like the Socrates story where he goes into the marketplace and they show him all these luxuries and fineries and he says, how many things there are in this world that I do not want, right? And that's a form of freedom. So not wanting something is as good as having it. Ironically, I think most people, if you were to ask them when they were happiest for a sustained period of time, not for a brief moment, because pleasure can override happiness and create kind of this illusion of happiness. But if you ask people when they were happy for a sustained period of time, they were probably doing some variation of nothing.
That's interesting. Because in the chase is this sort of lack, this contingency.
That's right. But then you get bored. If you just sit around all the time, you get bored. So you want adventure, you want surprise. Like there's a funny thought experiment of the bliss machine, right? Which is, suppose I could drill a hole in your head and put an electrode in, and I can stimulate just the right part of your brain, and I can put you in bliss. And you'll just be in bliss. Would you want that?
Might be nice.
For how long?
Do it and I'll tell you.
Right. So most people will say, well, I don't want that. I want meaning. I don't want just bliss. I want meaning. And if you kind of run this thought experiment long enough, I think most people realize actually what I want is I want surprise. I want the world to surprise me, and I want to wrestle with it in ways that are somewhat predictable but somewhat not. For some people, pure happiness is the ultimate goal. They want to, just be blissfully happy wherever they are, whenever they are. But I think other people, most people would say, well, I'm here in this world, I'm here in this life. I don't understand it or why, but I want to be engaged. I want to be surprised. I want to do things. I want to accomplish things. I want things and then get them, right? That's kind of the whole game that we're all playing here. If nothing worked out the way you expected, if it was all serendipity and you didn't want that, you would just be a ball of anxiety. On the other hand, if everything worked out as you expected and wanted, you'd be so bored you might as well be dead. So there's some, the river of life kind of flows between these two banks. You hear from a lot of successful people, they look back and they say, oh, the journey was the fun part, right? That was actually the entertaining part and I should have enjoyed it more. It's a common regret. And the journey is not only the reward, the journey is the only thing there is. Even success, it's human nature to bank it very, very quickly, right? Because the normal loop that we run through is you sit around, you're bored, then you want something. Then when you want something, you decide you're not going to be happy until you get that thing. Then you start your bout of suffering or anticipation while you strive to get that thing. If you get that thing, then you get used to it. And then you get bored again, then a few months later you want something else. And if you don't get it, then you're unhappy for a bit, and then you get over it, and then you want something else, right? That's the normal cycle. So whether you're happy or unhappy at the end, it tends not to last. Now, I don't want to be glib and say that, oh, there's no point in making money or being successful. There absolutely is. Money solves all your money problems. So it is good to have money. That said, there are those stories, I don't know if you've seen those studies, people who break their back and people who win the lottery are back to their baseline happiness 2 years later.
Yep.
I would say in general, this loop that we run through of desire, dopamine, fulfillment, unfulfillment, like you have to enjoy the journey. The journey is all there is, right? 99% of your time is spent on the journey. So what kind of a journey is it if you're not going to enjoy it?
The worst outcome in the world is not having self-esteem. Why?
I look at the people who don't like themselves, and that's the toughest slot because they're always wrestling with themselves, and it's hard enough to face the outside world, and no one's going to like you more than you like yourself. So if you're struggling with yourself, then the outside world becomes an insurmountable challenge. To some extent, self-esteem is a reputation you have with yourself. You're watching yourself at all times, you know what you're doing, and you have your own moral code. Everyone has a different moral code. But if you don't live up to your own moral code, the same code that you hold others to, it will damage your self-esteem. So perhaps one way to build up your self-esteem is to live up to your own code. Another way to raise your self-esteem might be to do things for others. If I look back on my life and, what are the moments that I'm actually proud of? There's very far and few between. And it's not that often. And it's not the things you would expect. It's not the material success. It's not having learned this thing or that. It's when I made a sacrifice for somebody or something that I loved. And that's when I'm actually, ironically, most proud. Now, that's through an explicit mental exercise, but I'll bet you at some level I'm recording that implicitly. So that tells me that even if I am not being loved, then the way to create love is to give love, to express love. So at some level, you're always watching yourself. That's what your consciousness is, right? It's the thing that's watching everything, including your mind, including your body.
You say thinking about yourself is the source of all unhappiness.
If you're thinking about your personality and your ego and the character of you, and you're obsessing over that, that's where a lot of depression and unhappiness sort of lingers and gets cultivated. Thinking about, woe is me, this happened to me, that happened to me, I have this personality, I have this issue, I deserve this, I didn't get that. You're just strengthening a little beast in there that is insatiable. And that's where I think a lot of unhappiness comes from.
Is this a justification for detachment?
Detachment is not a goal. Detachment is a byproduct. It's just a byproduct of just realizing, what matters and what doesn't. I think everybody craves thinking about something more than themselves. If you want to be, happy to some extent, you have to forget about your personal problems. And one way to do that is take on other problems, bigger problems. And that could be a mission, that could be that could be spirituality, that could be kids. Life is always throwing truth back at you. It's about whether you choose to see it, whether you choose to acknowledge it, even if it's painful. Truth is often painful, right? If it wasn't, we'd all be seeing truth all the time. Reality is always reflecting truth. That's all it is. All the philosophy that's out there, for example, it's almost trite. Like most people, they look at philosophy like until they discover it for themselves. Because wisdom is the set of things that cannot be transmitted. If they could be transmitted, we'd read the same 5 philosophy books, and we'd all be done, we'd all be wise. You have to learn it for yourself. It has to be rediscovered for yourself in your own context. You have to have specific experiences that then allow you to generalize and see the truth in those things. What is philosophy? Everyone, you live long enough, you'll be a philosopher. Philosophy is just when you find the hidden generalizable truths among the specific experiences that you've had in life. And then you know how to navigate future specific experiences based on some heuristics, and you create a philosophy around that. Any subject pursued deeply enough will eventually lead to philosophy. Mastery in anything, literally anything, will lead you to being a philosopher. You just have to stick with it long enough and generalize the truths back out. And these are universal truths. You can find unity in anything if you go deep enough. One of the realizations that I had is that there are these timeless old questions that we run into where the answers seem like paradoxes, so we stop thinking about them. So an example is free will. Do you have free will? Or does anything matter? Is there meaning to life? And we get stuck in them because, for example, is there a meaning to life? Like, yes, life has a meaning because you're right here. You create your own meaning. This moment has all the meaning you could imagine. It's all the meaning there is. On the other hand, you're going to die. It all goes to zero. Heat, death, the universe has no meaning, right? So which one is it? Well, the reason why it seems paradoxical is because you're asking the question of a human here and now at a certain scale and a certain time. And then you're answering it from the viewpoint of the universe over infinite time. So you pulled a trick. You switched the level at which you're answering the question. And questions should be answered at the level at which they're asked. So if you ask the question, is there meaning? You, Chris, are asking that question. Yes, to Chris, there is meaning. There's meaning right here. This is the meaning. You can interpret any meaning you want onto it. Don't ask the question as Chris and then answer it as God or as the universe. That's the trick that you're playing. That's why it seems paradoxical. The same way you can say, do I have free will? People debate free will all day long. The question is answered at the wrong frame. So they ask the question is, do I as an individual have free will? Hell yeah, I have free will. My mind-body system can't predict what I'm going to do next. The universe is infinitely complex. I'm making a choice in my mind and I'm doing something. There's my free will. Don't answer the question at the level at which it wasn't asked. So if God asked the question, is there free will? No, there is no free will. The universe asked the question, there is no free will. But if an individual asks the question right now, then yes, there is free will. So a lot of these paradoxes resolve themselves. Philosophical paradoxes that people have been struggling with since the beginning of time, when you just realize you're answering them at a scale and time different than they were asked.